Was work this fun before the pandemic? Several firms have posted videos online like this one from semiconductor firm Global Foundries in Dresden, with staff singing, dancing and having fun amid the pandemic. But whether activities like this really help boost happiness or make up for the isolation or challenges of working from home is yet to be seen. I'm Ben Fazul and welcome to the show. Scientists would call it survival of the fittest. While some of us have been fighting for our lives in this pandemic, others have been battling loneliness. Both take a certain amount of physical and mental fitness. In the Ugandan capital, Kampala, we met a musician with a unique survival strategy.
Meet Easy, Uganda's emerging dancehall artist. Finally, in 2020, the 22-year-old was set to release his first album. And then the COVID-19 pandemic struck.
I was still trying to lay down the basics. COVID turns up.
Lockdown stopped all social activities in Kampala. Music performances, Easy's major income generator, became illegal. But one night, under the pressure of COVID-19 blues, Easy had an idea.
I woke up with a rhythm in my head, and I'm like,
It was the nirvana of Tumbiza sound, Easy's breakthrough song. The track shuns the worries of the pandemic, and it became Uganda's lockdown anthem. Soon, with the help from Ugandan TikTokers and influencers like Kampala's H2C dancers, the song went viral with over 2 million views on YouTube and became a remedy for depressed moods. But the song's popularity attracted unwanted attention. The Ugandan government banned it, claiming Easy was inciting the public to party in the middle of a pandemic. Easy would later be ordered to explain himself. Undaunted, he asked the authorities to take it easy.
In the song, I was speaking of COVID and basically saying our hearts grew strong. We are not scared of it anymore. If we have to have sanitizers, we'll get them. If we have to have face masks, we will get them. But it doesn't stop you from being happy. Forget your problems, yeah?
But the publicity of being banned shot Easy and Tumbiza sound to stardom. And now that he's finally off the hook, he can enjoy every moment. From cursing the disastrous pandemic to making the musical cure for it, Easy has a message for young people.
However bad the situation might be, it doesn't stop at that. You will rise.
Well, it's crises like this one that often drive innovation. But just how innovative have we been in this pandemic? A lot of us have learnt how to go digital, but a lot of us, including many companies and countries, are still struggling to do just that. Here's Derek Williams with another of your questions on the coronavirus pandemic.
Israel was testing for COVID at McDonald's drive-thrus. What are some other innovative ideas for tackling the pandemic?
Crises force us to find solutions, and the pandemic has driven innovation in a huge number of ways in a really vast range of fields. Off the top of my head, your comment about fast food restaurants in Israel also serving up vaccines reminded me of a recent event that took place here in Berlin when public transport authorities turned a train into a mobile vaccination center. So many showed up to get shots that a lot of people had to be left behind on the platform. Robots and drones are also being used a lot in innovative ways to fight the pandemic. For example, like these in Indonesia that have been used to deliver food and medicines to homes and to ships where COVID-19 patients are in isolation. But for me, by far, the greatest innovation during the pandemic has been the rapid development and approval and deployment of messenger RNA vaccines. The incredibly promising technology isn't new. We've been working on it for decades, but until now, it had remained tantalizingly out of reach. And then the pandemic caused us to really hit the gas on them. And mRNA platforms have finally arrived. In the future, they'll allow us to react to changes in mutating pathogens with tweaks to vaccines a lot more cheaply and a lot more rapidly. And they can even be designed to attack non-infectious diseases like cancer. So if there's a silver lining to COVID-19, it's that in the future, the mRNA vaccines developed to fight it and what they teach us will save many, many more lives far beyond the pandemic.
Here's a look at a couple of other stories making news during this coronavirus pandemic. US drug maker Merck & Co. says its COVID antiviral pill Molnupiravir can reduce the risk of hospitalization or death by 50%. That's according to findings of an interim analysis of a late-stage trial. The treatment, if approved by authorities, could give doctors more tools to fight COVID. After being closed for nearly 300 days, beaches in the Cuban capital, Havana, have reopened. Authorities gave the green light for resuming outdoor activities, with most of the city's residents vaccinated against COVID-19. Beaches and pools can now operate at limited capacity, along with bars and restaurants. Italy has become the first European country to mandate COVID-19 health passes for all workers. In future, employees will need to have a so-called green pass or be suspended from their jobs without pay. They'll also have the option of showing a negative test, which they'll have to pay for. The government hopes the measure will see more people get vaccinated.
Italy's government taking tough measures to combat COVID-19. From next month, it will be mandatory for all workers in public and private sectors to get a health pass. Users will have to show proof of vaccination, a negative test, or recovery from infection. The Green Pass is an instrument of freedom that makes places safer. Secondly, the Green Pass makes our vaccination campaign more effective. On the streets of Rome, there's a mixed reaction to the announcement. The Green Pass is an important tool to deal with this serious situation. In such a serious situation, we need effective solutions. In my opinion, it's not fair, because I am a free citizen. I can decide whether or not to get a Green Pass. When there's an obligation, we no longer live in a democracy, but a dictatorship. So, I don't agree. Italy is the first country in Europe to implement the COVID-19 Green Pass for all workers. Originally, it was set up to ease travel restrictions and give access to indoor venues. Authorities now say expanding the measures will help the vaccination uptake, stop infections, and prevent further lockdowns. Those who ignore the decree could face fines up to €1,000. But persuading everyone to get inoculated may be challenging. The country has seen protests in recent weeks, including at various railway stations. Italy was one of the worst hit by the coronavirus pandemic last year. More than 130,000 people died. While around 74% of the population have received at least one COVID-19 shot, it's a delicate balancing act for authorities now to prevent a repeat of the past as winter approaches.
Australia plans to reopen its borders to international travellers. Prime Minister Scott Morrison announced the decision, saying that the restrictions will be lifted once the country reaches an 80% vaccination rate. However, travellers will be required to be fully vaccinated and to adhere to quarantine requirements once they enter the country. National carrier Qantas Airways has also announced it will be resuming some international flights starting next month.
For the last 18 months, standing in line for an international flight was an experience very few Australians were allowed. Australia shut its borders, keeping out non-citizens, but also blocking most Australian citizens from around the world from going home. As part of a policy to stop coronavirus cases being brought in from abroad, the government limited the number of people allowed to enter Australia each month. Those allowed in had to quarantine in specially designated hotels for 2 weeks and pay the bills themselves. The policy helped keep COVID-19 cases low for months. But it could not stop outbreaks of the Delta variant in major cities in July this year. Now, as more people are vaccinated, Prime Minister Scott Morrison is lifting some of those restrictions from November.
It's time to give Australians their lives back. We will be able to open those international borders again, and that will enable Australians who are fully vaccinated and Australians and residents of Australia who are overseas, who are fully vaccinated, to be able to travel again.
Once 80% of a state's population is vaccinated, vaccinated citizens will be allowed to fly abroad. Quotas limiting the number of people allowed into the country will be lifted, and fully vaccinated Australians will be able to quarantine at home for 7 days. The airline Qantas will start flying internationally in mid-November. And for Australians with the jab, travel abroad could be within reach.
And we leave you with these next pictures. One of the biggest global events since the start of the pandemic, reopening in Dubai. Nearly 200 countries are taking part in Expo 2020, which was delayed for a year because of the coronavirus restrictions. Dubai hopes the €6 billion fair will attract new business. European Parliament has urged nations not to take part, citing human rights abuses in Dubai and the government's use of spyware. Critics also question how many workers fell ill with COVID during the construction.